After 2 years of pandemic and with interest rates rising, Canadians are stressed about their finances. A survey by CPA Canada shows that a quarter of us feel worse off financially than we did a year ago. 65% of us are worried about debt. The Thriving or Surviving survey also showed that only about half of us have an emergency fund, and of those who don't, 50% couldn't come up with even $500 in unexpected expenses. Michael Massoud is Finance Director at CPA Canada and a financial literacy volunteer. Thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to the show. So
one of the things that actually jumped out at me, because, Michael, in some ways it's not surprising that we feel stressed, that we have debt, we sort of know these. It's actually the grade we give ourselves. Most of us actually feel like we're doing better than we are, which is in itself kind of dangerous, is it not?
It is, actually, absolutely. And I think there really might be a disconnect between the way people grade themselves on their personal finance skills and the behaviors displayed. I know in the study, we do see that almost 80% of people are giving themselves a passing grade and feel that they have the knowledge needed to make the right choices when it comes to their money. But the thing is, when it comes to personal finances, knowledge on its own is not enough to influence behaviors. In fact, based on a study by the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, financial confidence is actually the key factor that contributes to positive well-being. And to become financially confident, like any other skill, we need to actually put that into practice in order to elevate our behaviors. For example, developing a budget and paying yourself first.
The level of indebtedness, again, we kind of know household debt is high. It's at global records, and it was pre-pandemic. In some ways, for some, it got better throughout the pandemic. Michael, did that actually maybe take the pressure off people who previously would have thought, oh, I should be paying down debt, and they felt a little bit wealthier because there were some savings to be found in working from home and the like?
You know, that's a good question. So I'll say it really depends on who you ask. I guess with rising interest rates and inflation's hitting its highest level in decades, Canadians have really been up a lot financially over the past year. And we can really see people's finances, like you said, a quarter of people it's gotten worse, and the same percentage of people have a negative outlook. I'll say this, another factor that could really be contributing to people's view on their finances is that as things open up again, people feel that pressure to go out and spend, whereas in the last year, it was closed due to the pandemic. So that might be impacting people's view on debt and their finances.
So we know with rates going up, it's going to pinch people, even people who can afford higher rates. It's going to be unpleasant. Cash flow gets affected. How big a concern is it from the point of view of what you saw in the survey and what we understand about people's finances? Are we quite vulnerable to this period where debt's getting more expensive?
I think we are actually are a little more vulnerable than in the past, and I would say this, that if people are worried about, I guess, their finances, I'd say the most important thing is really to not be afraid to, let's say, ask for help, and that there's really no shame in reaching out to friends and family or organizations in your community as you're trying to deal with your finances. If we focus, let's say, on just that, on your question on debt, I think that it's really common for people to confuse net worth and self-worth, and people might feel that they just don't know what's happening. If viewers take maybe one piece of advice from me today, as I'll say this, is ask, there are things that you can do to reduce and manage your debt. Ask your bank or creditor to see if they'd be willing to reduce their interest rate on outstanding debt. A lot of people don't realize that many times banking creditors are actually willing to reduce rates. The worst they can say is no, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. And if you do need more help, I highly recommend that people consider a not-for-profit credit counselor who can really help work out a debt management program at no cost to the consumer. I know organizations such as Credit Counseling Canada can help you find an approved agency in your area. And just to be clear, in full transparency, I will highlight that I do personally volunteer with Credit Counseling Canada.
Well, we appreciate that, and we appreciate your time today, Michael. Thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot, Amanda.
Michael Massoud is Director of Finance at CPA Canada. Time for the takeaway and what to do when you've got gas. Canada definitely does have gas, natural gas anyway, an abundance of the fuel that until quite recently was considered the greener alternative energy source in comparison at least to other fossil fuels. Newer energy sources that are entirely green, like wind and solar, have a way of making gas look a little dirtier. But the truth is, until we have reliable green alternatives, gas will be a much needed part of our energy equation. The trouble with gas has always been how to transport it. It's been a continental resource available only to those we could ship to by land. But the emergence of new technology in the form of liquefying the gas or cooling it so it's safe enough to transport by ship means the entire world can share in Canada's gas wealth. And yes, Canada can benefit by sharing it. Given the critical state of energy supply in Europe right now, getting our gas to market in Germany or France is more vital than ever. But in the midst of climate change promises, the construction of LNG terminals on Canada's east coast face new opposition. There's already plenty of pushback for the LNG terminals being constructed on the west coast. And despite the fact that this technology has been available for many years and Canada is lousy with natural gas, we have exactly 0 export facilities completed. That's a lot of lost market share over time. Opponents of the terminals will argue that it's counterintuitive to ship more gas at a time when we're working to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. But tell that to the Europeans, who will be shivering this winter under reduced consumption quotas driven by scarcity of energy supply. My takeaway? Every country has a role to play in moving the world beyond fossil fuels. That Canada is rich in one of the bridge resources is arguably something to celebrate, not protest. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.